next assessment criteria, 1.7, which is state the purpose of using BWCs or body-worn cameras. So body-worn cameras are becoming more and more popular in recent times, particularly in the emergency services. Police, paramedics, firefighting, etc., and even things like parking wardens as well, because of course they do help to curb behaviour. But what do you think about? What do you think about the use of body cams? And if you don't like them, then you've got to kind of think, well, why wouldn't you want your behaviour being recorded? They are technically, a good thing. The only kind of downside, I say downside, not really to you, but to the employer, is just perhaps the hoops that your employer's got to kind of jump through in order to provide them for you. If you think, it's not everybody can use them because of their collecting sensitive information. And if you think about the use with security, they're often going to be used in connection with a crime being committed, and so you think of the personal data that's likely to be particularly private and should be treated with obviously particularly care. And you think of, there's many occasions where footage is captured will show victims, potential witnesses, suspects or other third parties in a state of distress, So therefore, your employer will have to ensure that they've registered with the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, and they've got procedures in place in relation to who views it and who stores and how that footage is stored and how it is provided. They must also have somebody who's CCTV trained, in order to be able to view that footage as well. So you, as a security operative using a body-worn camera, you don't actually need to be SIA licensed yourself unless you're actually going to view the recorded materials. And so, the best kind of cameras to have in place will be the systems which don't have a playback screen, or if they do, they're password protected in order that you can't actually view the content. I know it seems a bit silly, well, why can't I view the content? Because I've just viewed it with my own eyes, but now I can't view it back. But it is what it is, and it's to do with the licensing requirements for people using CCTV specifically to either deter crime or to deal with or to film kind of violent or potential violent encounters. So let's have a look at some of the pros, some of the positives. So deter crime. Do they deter crime? Yes, 100% they do. You're being watched, right? So it curbs behaviour of the service user and of the security operative. It identifies and secures evidence against offenders, and of course it's self-protection against malicious types of allegations. So in my opinion, 100% they're good. Okay, the amount of times I've used, as a door supervisor working on a door to say to people, look, did you know you're on CCTV? By saying that obviously makes the person consider their actions, because of course they're being filmed. It's just important that if you are using body-worn cameras, that they do have signage on it to let that person know that they are being recorded. And also whether it's audio as well, because audio quite often can be a lot more intrusive than the actual video. And so often they'll actually have signs on there, and of course when it does record there'll be a flashing light, but it's also good practice, and you should actually let the person know, and you can't, kind of say to them, say something to them, in a situation, say, well, look, I'm pushing the record button now in order to protect myself and yourself, and anything that we now say is being recorded and maybe handed over to law enforcement or the police if required or requested. Okay, and of course it lets them know that they are being recorded. The next assessment criteria now, which is 1.8, which is identify strategies that can assist personal safety in conflict situations. So there's a range of problem-solving strategies that may help to de-escalate a situation, lots of which have already been covered on your original conflict management training, and of course lots that you have perhaps developed over the years in relation to minimizing conflict. So let's have a look at a few of them anyway, just to refresh. So strategy could be an awareness, have an awareness of the situation. So what does that mean, having awareness of the situation? So awareness is of the situation, is it escalating? Is the person getting in your space? Okay, and what's their body language? Are you aware of their body language? If you're going to turn around and say, oh, it just happened out of nowhere, did it happen out of nowhere, or was it the case if you didn't take any notice, didn't notice the signs of escalation, and you didn't kind of respond appropriately? So what's your body language saying when you're communicating? Are you aware of that? What's their body language? Okay, so part of awareness of the situation is being aware of yourself and their side. So it comes back to understanding emotionally irrational, how you're feeling, and trying to trigger rational thinking by using choice speech to diffuse the situation. Remember, you should always be continuously using the DNA. What's the DNA? The dynamic risk assessment. What was that again? So remember, S, step back. A, assess the threat. Person, object, place. F, find help. E, evaluate your options. And R, respond while continuously reassess. So remember, what we're looking for here is strategies that can assist personal safety in conflict situations. Okay, so being aware, using the dynamic risk assessment. Try and build a rapport with the person. Okay, so how do we do this? Mainly empathy. Be on their side. Tackle the problem and the issue together rather than being opposite sides. You know, one of the best ways that I managed to resolve so many situations is exactly that. You know, there's a potential confrontation or situation. It's because the service user they're not getting what they want. Okay, so it's important as store supervisors or security operatives that we manage those expectations. You know, and though we may not agree with the person, if we can pretend to them that we do agree, then of course we're singing from the same hymn sheet. We're part of the same choir, right? So there's no longer them to have a go at us. Okay, so if you can do that, build a rapport, use empathy, say, yeah, I would feel exactly the same if I was you. If it was up to me, I would allow you to do it, but unfortunately I can't, you know, this part of the role, you know, you're being seen on CCTV, etc., you know, and it's a shame you were, because if we weren't going to let you, okay, you get the idea, okay, about building rapport. So actively listen to the person. So again, that's part of the rapport process, isn't it? So make it look like you're listening to me if you're not. So, you know, that's nodding at the right time. Paraphrase, you know, what you said. Let me check I've just understood you properly, right? So you're saying that this is it. Is that right? Oh, wow. Okay, right. I understand you. It makes the person feel that they're listened to. You know what? Quite often that's what the person wants. They just want to feel respected. They want to feel listened to. Okay, look for problem-solving techniques, you know, use them, you know, things like, you know, looking for the win-win where you're both happy, looking at delivering gifts, you know, what are gifts again? You know, gifts are just something you can do for them, not that you're going to give them, but in order to be able to make them feel that you've given them something, you know, so often to come back at another time, you know, offer to take the details in order to escalate to complain, etc., etc. So just come across like you're trying to assist them rather than to try and ignore them. And of course, use things like, you know, in these types of situations that escalate, use CCTV. You know, CCTV is the greatest tool. I used it so many times, you know, because of, you know, you could say, well, look, you know, I would allow you to do that, you know, and in fact, you know, I wish I could, but the problem is you've been caught on the CCTV and now it's already been seen. Now we've got to do this. So unfortunately, I can't let you do this because you're being seen. And again, another benefit of the BWC, the body-worn cameras as a deterrent, of course, is to re-emphasize that. Say, well, look, buddy, you know, at the end of the day, I can appreciate what you're saying, but you see, we're on camera here and it's being recorded, so I can't do that. Another way to help de-escalate would be to be working in teams, right? And so if you've got colleagues that you can switch with, you know, or management you can pass them on to, that's ideal. And of course, when it comes to escorting people, you know, from a premises or a site, you know, think about the psychology side, what's going on in their head in relation to if they don't want to do what they're being told. You know, sometimes, you know, the answer to people is violence and you want to prevent that. And so what can happen sometimes is, you know, if I'm asking someone to leave, you know, and they say they don't want to go, and I say, well, if you don't go, we're going to have to physically remove. They start wearing me up, right? They start like, you can kind of see them looking you up and down, you know. You think, well, I don't want this, right? But it's them in their head. It's they're kind of working out if they could have you, you know, if they could have a go. Whereas if you imagine, if you've got colleagues behind you, then suddenly that's outweighed, okay? So sometimes, you know, if you've got backup there, not right here, so we're bullying the person, but, you know, slightly further back, if they can see that backup's there if need be, that in itself could get the person to leave on their own because, of course, they're in fear of the retaliation from you and your mates. And this is where you get the old thing. If it was just me and you, I'd have you. But you and all your mates, and then be like, oh, you know, come around the corner, just me and you. You know, well, why would I do that? I'm not interested in fighting. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got a mortgage to pay. I'm not here to fight, you know. And so, look, you know, you're going to have to go. But if you don't go, we're going to have to physically remove you. Okay, and of course, you know, the other thing is I think I've already said this, is know your limits, you know when not to get involved in situations, you know, so sometimes it's just going to be too dangerous, you know. For example, if you've got a big brawl or a big kickoff or like a mass theft spree in your supermarket where you got a load of people coming in robbing stuff. I mean, realistically, what are you going to do? You're going to start going around knocking people out? No, you shouldn't, you can't, and you won't. You know, no. Situations like that, you must just back away, call the police.